Hey everybody, Tom Barnes, stories from the 78. And if you are a certain age like I am, you remember going to your grandparents' house and seeing that giant wooden box with speakers? That was the stereo. And I remember hearing soul music coming out of those speakers, setting the mood for the house. I'm talking Al Green, Sam Cooke, Otis Redding, all of those things that you like heard later on in movies like Dirty Dancing, and you want to know what is this music? What about it, right? And my friend DJ Debbie started a club back in the pandemic days, the early days, playing music outside. Remember how important that was? Heart of Chicago Soul Club is what DJ Debbie started, and I have her now for this story from the 7-8. So, DJ Debbie, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Tom?
Oh, I'm a lot better now knowing that Heart of Chicago Soul Club exists because I am new to the scene. So I apologize for not knowing about you sooner. But a friend of mine that is on Instagram shared one of your events, and I was immediately like flies or, moth to a flame interested in seeing what was going on. So I'm very excited to talk to you.
Well, that's great. That's our goal. We've been around about a year and a half and just trying to get the word out. So we're doing it really grassroots, old school with social media. We hit the streets every time we have an event with flyers, stickers.
I
We're
know.
constantly talking to people when we go out to places and sharing the events on everywhere we can. So.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe, like growing up, I grew up in the 80s and 90s as my youth, a lot of soul music was introduced to me by my dad and mom listening to it on the radio and also randomly like Dirty Dancing because I didn't know who Otis Redding was until I didn't know. I mean, I heard of like the songs, but I didn't know that the artist saying the song was named Otis Redding. And then you discover Sam Cooke and Al Green and so on and so forth. You go all down this rabbit hole of this wonderful music that is soul music. And we were speaking a little bit before we started on the recording here about your career. I mean, you started DJing a few decades ago, a couple decades ago, right? Like in the 80s.
Yeah.
Did I read that right?
Yeah, well, late 80s, I was a mod kid. I just loved everything 60s, from soul to ska to like uh 80s revival,
Mhm.
mod, the jam, power pop. I was way into everything, but I always had a soft spot for Motown and uh, you know, anything 60s and really orchestrated just kind of hit the sweet spot for me.
Absolutely.
And we made, I was in a scooter club and, we would go to Medusa's and we would go to a lot of dance things. We go to Detroit, visited the Motown Museum, and I just was obsessed, but I really didn't you know, know what Northern Soul was, but I knew I loved soul and I collected it. And, I was lucky enough to play a few times at Club Dreamers and the Artful Dodger back then.
Great names
So,
of old
but
clubs, man.
yeah, old school. And I fell in love with like all this ska mod soul by watching videos in the old Medusas. So, got hooked pretty hard. And then, life happens. Had some kids. I have three boys, one who comes to our events.
Very cool.
And when when my kids got a little older, I started going out more and met up with some old friends who are now Windy City Soul Club, and I was hooked. And I went down this Northern Soul rabbit hole really hard.
Well,
So,
when you say Northern Soul, what do you mean by that for folks that might not know?
okay, Northern Soul is soul music. It's American black music,
Hmm.
made kind of curated by this youth culture that came out of the mod scene in the 60s, the swinging 60s.
Hmm.
They people were like just in love with R&B and in the UK and soul music, and they wanted more. They wanted more Motown, and they wanted this up tempo 100 beats per minute, you know, danceable music to dance all night. And they were in the late 60s, early 70s, they were dancing in clubs like the Twisted Wheel and the Torch up in Manchester and the northern area. So northern is not like the north of the US, it's actually the north of the UK that where it became popular. But the clubs were closing and you know, new ones were popping up and people wanted to dance till 8 in the morning,
What were they dancing
young
to?
kids.
Some of
They
the
were
artists.
they were dancing to, all the Motown stars, but then they were, they were discovering all this music that was here in the US. There were rumors that there were these songs that never made it or, that were sent to as promo copies or were B-sides and things that never made it, but had this high up tempo, really exciting tempo. I mean, you may have heard of like Gloria Jones' Tainted Love or
Yeah,
Billy Butler, Chicago artist, brother to Jimmy Butler, who just passed away from the Impressions. Um, he had a big hit on the northern scene called Right Track. I mean, Etta James. I'm just trying to think. There's a lot of
there's
them.
a lot that recorded at, even at
There's
like
so
Chess
many.
Records, right?
There's like Chess Records. So
Yeah,
Chicago was also a big hub for soul music, along with Detroit and Philly. So Heart of Chicago is, a play on, the heart of Chicago, that record row, but also we have heart and we have soul. Going back to Northern Soul, these DJs who played in these clubs were very competitive, and each club, had a DJ that would come over to the US and dig, or other people, regular people would want to come and dig for these American uh, records that just didn't go anywhere.
I didn't know that.
And yeah, and so, there's just they're very familiar, very up tempo, happy sounding records, and so there a lot of them are just like the words are so full of pain, and these
Oh,
British
it's soul
kids really
music, right?
can. Yeah, right. They connected with this sound, and times were tough in the UK as well as times were tough for Black Americans. And so they really connected with this music. And, there was this huge club in this tiny town called Wigan, which is probably about, 50-minute train ride from Manchester. And this became the biggest club that everybody wants to say they went to if they were around in the 70s. So it started in about 73 and then went until 81. And a lot of music was put on the floor for the first time as the Northern Soul hit in at Wigan Casino.
I've heard
And
about this in a documentary I just watched not that long ago,
yeah,
randomly.
and there's a great movie called Northern Soul by Lane Constantine, which, talks about these young kids who want to get over to the US and find more records, and they did. It's a little loosely based on things, but uh there are records, are American records, a lot of them coming from Chicago. You've got the Brunswick label, which we've got Chess, Checker, VJ, which was one of the first ones, Argo, Constellation. I mean, you can go on and on, but
Yeah,
1200 to 2200 South Michigan Avenue was a huge soul factory, not only producing records, having artists, new artists coming and going down the street, record label to record label until they got a contract singing for people. There are distribution centers that where, you know, labels even like Motown would send things to get distributed through Chicago. So Chicago was this huge hub. And uh, so, people love to come dig here, come dig in Detroit and bring it back where it was loved and appreciated. And the artists were loved and appreciated. A lot of them didn't even know how, um, this bizarro world where in the US they're nobody, but then they go over to the UK and they've got this, fandom,
isn't that crazy?
intense fandom.
When you saw
Hmm.
that firsthand too, did I read in the reader that you traveled to UK to spin Northern Soul
Yeah,
on some of that scene, right?
yeah. So during COVID, you know, pre-COVID. the girls and I were out dancing at a lot of different dance events and mainly Windy City Soul Club, and fell in love with the music. And
Hmm.
then when and we had Almont Chicago would do these smaller events, and uh, you know, when things shut down, we reorganized and we're like, well, we're going to live stream. So we went
Okay,
in
you
my
were doing that like
yard,
in your backyard?
my backyard.
That's
We're in my
awesome.
backyard.
What
We set
neighborhood are
up.
you in, Debbie?
I'm in. It's kind of Irving Park. It's
Okay.
West
So
Walker.
city proper though, either way, where if
Totally.
you're playing music outside, the whole neighborhood's hearing you, right?
The whole neighborhood. I mean, we had a big PA, and we had the whole. My neighbors were loving it. Everybody's
That's
locked
great.
up, so we're out in the backyard all masked up, and we didn't know anything back then. And we're playing, and I'm sharing it on all kinds of platforms, and I kept sharing it to these UK people that I was watching their live streams,
This
and
is crazy. This is in 2020, not
2020.
1965. This is 2020
This
where
is
people are just still finding soul music that's been around for years and years and years.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's like 20,000 Northern or more Northern Soul records out there that are considered Northern Soul. So, people are out there like playing for each other. And the original kids from the Northern Soul scene, they're 60s, 70s, some 80s, and they're like still out there dancing. Even though Wigan shut down in 81, they continued, and there's still soul clubs out there with the original people, and it has resurfaced in the youth culture again. There's a new youth culture popping up, Bristol Northern Soul Club. There's a woman named Lavana, a young girl in 2010, had a viral video where she danced to Pharrell Williams' Happy, walking down the street dancing, and then it went right into the Velvet Hammers' Happy. And she's Northern Soul Girl. And so she's, leading that in Bristol. There's people in London. If you look up the Rivoli Ballroom, my goodness, do I want to go to that? Go to
Yeah.
that. Yeah. And so when I heard there was a 50th anniversary of Wigan Casino, um, I just had to go. So I had
Mhm.
been live streaming and caught the attention of some people who are my very close friends right now, who ran this group called the Soul Twins. And they yelled at me for putting stuff on their page without asking. And then they're like, "Hey, would you like to get a bunch of girls together to do a live stream on Sundays?" And I was like, "Sure." So I got my friend Cher from Toronto and Fiona from Ireland and this girl Jemima from Blackpool, and we just found women all over the world, and we're doing these Sunday live streams. And it became really, kind of normal, I guess, and odd to be doing that. But we would be in the comments in the chat with other people's live streams, and then they'd come into your live stream. And so it was like this whole community and this world that opened up of these mythical people. Because when you think the Northern Soul scene in Wigan Casino, they can't be real people, but they were, and they're still out there. So I told my friend Don Mopsy Morris, we call him Mopsy, and my friend Sean Callan, who's my club is our club, Heart of Chicago, is paired with this uh, Blackburn Northern Soul Oldies Club. Um, I told them I was coming, and they're like, "Well, we're putting on something on the promenade in Blackpool, where the 50th was being held at Winter Gardens, and I'll show
Mhm.
you a picture of me standing uh,
Look at that. Very
in
cool.
the Winter Gardens. This is just the
I've been there
hallway.
before.
Yeah. Oh, you've been there.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so they had 9 ballrooms, two humongous ones, but beautiful ornate gilded spring-loaded dance floors.
Oh, like
And
the
I
Aragon Ballroom.
like the Aragon
A
Ballroom,
lot of people
and
don't know that.
I didn't know that either, but I
Spring-loaded ballroom, or it
right,
used or it was. I mean, that's originally it was a ballroom for that
right,
dancing and everything, where people would dance so the floor would absorb the shock, so it
right.
wouldn't be so. That's how it also absorbs like mosh pitting now. But either way,
Well,
Aragon
you know
Ballroom.
what? We did our first event at Color Club, and I swear that's got to be spring loaded. I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's a second floor ballroom, and it is just such a luscious room, the floor, the sound, everything. So we tend to go back there a few times a year. It's a huge one, and we have to be able to fill it because it's got a 250 capacity.
Yeah.
And we filled it. Believe me, we filled it. But I like to go back and forth between the Hideout and Color Club, who I believe has a spring-loaded dance floor. I think it's one of the best dance floors in the city.
And I think that's the one I saw my friend posting about, and that's what got me interested. And you were
Yeah.
talking about like,
Oh,
bands that people don't know. My wife and I, our wedding song is "Victim of Love" by Charles Bradley, and
oh,
a lot of people like when we played it at the wedding, people are like, "What is this? I've never
yeah,
heard this. Is this new?" And we're like, "No,
yeah,
this song's not new. This song is old."
right.
But I found it strangely enough during the pandemic, and that's when your people started finding you, and now here you are with your own club that you founded, and you do
Yeah.
these events. That how often do you do these events?
We do the bigger events we do every other month. It's a lot of work to
I
get to
bet.
the point where we could all get on the stage and do it. It's a lot of promotion. I'm hoping that it's going to get a lot easier, that the ticket sales happen a lot faster, and we're able to, you know, do it monthly, but right now we're doing every other month. So we have one coming up April 5th, back at the Hideout, and then
Great
in
place to see any kind of show.
yes, it's so
So
great. And yeah,
go ahead.
I like the idea of the DJs being the kind of like the band.
Yeah,
And I like putting the setup on the stage. I don't want to be in a booth, and I don't want to be off to the side. I want it to be the focus, because the way we look at this music is it's a very happy, familiar, orchestrated, emotional music, and we feel the music, and we kind of set the tone because we want to dance to it, and we don't play
of course.
anything we wouldn't want to dance to. So, when we put a record on, we're up there dancing along with everybody and are part of the party. We want
I
to be
love
part of the party.
I love that you say when we put a record on, and that's actually what you mean. It's not like hitting, play on a MacBook and having a
Yeah.
song play, which so many people do now, or on your phone for that matter. You're up there, spinning records, and that's kind of your thing. You've been doing this. You're like DJ Debbie. You've been known because you started back in the 80s. People come to you for DJ Debbie's School of DJing, and you even have a little setup. That's what we're kind of seeing off on the side there. You have some of
Yeah.
your records out and your stuff. You want to just give a little tour of like what you got set up there?
Sure. I mean, I have, I have like some favorites. Like, here's a Chicago record. I'll throw it on if you want.
Sure,
Do you want me
why
to throw
not?
it
Yeah.
on?
You can grab the
Okay.
iPhone and
Um,
just and take it with you if you want.
okay. Yeah. Let me turn everything on. But here's a really nice favorite, that when I put this on, um, we are DJs, but we're also selectors. We find the records, we collect it, we hunt them down. You can't go in and find, this record. You can't go in there and in a record store and find it easily. Sorry, I'm juggling.
No, it's okay.
Let's see if
Asking you to do 40 things at once. I
I
apologize, but
know it's
I like
fine.
doing this. This is fun. Have you ever been to Beverly Records?
Yes, I haven't been in a while.
I mean, they have probably the single-handed biggest 45 collection probably in the United States.
Yes, and it's very picked over, but
Oh,
we,
is it?
we we're very specific in what we're looking for.
Oh, I love it. I know that you're dancing right now, and I'm just shaking in my seat here. This is fantastic. I love it. I feel honored that I'm getting a private DJ Debbie lesson here on the sly here with doing an interview, but this is awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Well, let me tell you, it's obsessive, and we just love to share, the stuff we love. So I could totally either, give joy to somebody or bore them to death. I'm not sure, but
You sound
this.
like me talking to my kids about music because I quiz them all the time on, what kind of music is this? They're like, it's Motown, like I want my 12-year-old son to know what Motown music is.
Right, right. Well, my kids too. They know I have one that comes out to our nights, and he dances all night with us, and it's great. But here, nice Chicago record on Checker, which was a
Oh, look
subsidiary
at that.
of Chess.
Very
So,
cool.
why did that song not make it? These are the questions we're always posing. Why did these songs not make it? You know,
And how do
um,
you just find them by just digging through stacks and checking them out and listening to them or hearing
it is,
recommendations from other people over the years, you know?
yeah, I listen to a lot of playlists and a lot of people when people were live streaming. I listened to a lot of things, but I'm just always just listening to music and um digging, and I have a little player I bring along and I listen, and at this point I kind of have the beat in my head. I know what I'm looking for. I know what sound I'm looking for, and 9 times out of 10 I'm pretty right. I have this like kind of Northern Soul kind of Bible of records, and I'll find records in the wild and then listen to them. And there's a lot of garbage out there. There's a lot of
Sure.
the same stuff, especially in Chicago. You get a lot of the stuff that were heavily pushed out into the world and had a lot of copies. But I'm looking for those things that are lesser known, but
Are these things
have,
hard to are they hard to
yes,
find for you?
they're
Like,
hard to find.
are they
Yeah.
even hard to find like digitally? Like if somebody wanted to stream it like on Spotify, if they want
No,
to dig in.
you could do a digital, you could listen digitally for sure.
But it's not the same
There's
as putting on a actual record, obviously,
yeah,
but because that's the real fun, right? Finding these
right,
old school. So when you are like at one of these events and you have one of these old records that are, maybe there was only like 5,000 made, pressed here in Chicago back in the day, and you put
right.
one on, do people like look and be like, where did she find this? Or, like that kind of thing?
There's a lot of Shazamming. There's a lot of what the hell was that? There is, because it's shocking how much music we produced in this country that just never made it.
Which is sad for
And
all those artists because it was good music,
yeah, yeah. I just read a really amazing book. Oh gosh, no, I'm gonna. We searched for the stars and found soul. It's by this Englishman who came to Detroit around the same time I was going to Detroit, and I reached out to him after I finished the book because I was so excited. But he went and found these producers and writers and
that were all just kind of still hanging out,
artists
right?
still hanging out, like really, some destitute, some just had like like a basement full of tapes that they never put out. And this guy ended up putting out some tapes on Kent, but there were artists that were just not realizing how huge they were. There's a record I really want, and I probably will never be able to touch it, by Duke Browner, who wrote a lot for Motown and a lot of the Detroit labels. He had a song called Crying Over You, and it's like one of the biggest songs come out of Wigan. Everybody knows the clap when you're supposed to clap, and
Mhm.
it's a great song. And I heard it in Blackpool, played, and the whole entire everybody knew when to do the clap in this
Oh, I
in
love it.
the Empress Ballroom. But he was so suspect of these guys and would never let them get him over. But people like Pat Lewis or Little Ann, they went over and could not believe the reception they got from these super fans who knew all the words to their songs, didn't think those songs ever went anywhere, but somebody got a copy and brought it to Wigan or brought it to Cleethorpes, and people were throwing roses at Pat Lewis, and she they were finally beloved for what they did, which was really amazing songs. Here, I'll play a Pat Lewis. You want to hear Pat Lewis? I
Sure.
just
Yeah.
picked
Why
this
not?
up. So speaking of a dig, I did go on a dealer dig. A friend of mine got like 12 boxes of soul records from somebody
Right.
that got rid of stuff, and I went over and I dug this record out. So let me throw it on. Um,
So who are we listening to?
Here, I'll take the
So it's kinda got like a Motown vibe to it, but not necessarily
Yeah, it sounds
Motown.
very Motown Towny. It was in Detroit.
But these weren't the ones that were on the, the AM's top 40, they were the ones that just didn't make it for one reason or another, but they're
Right.
wonderful, beautiful songs.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds very familiar, uh, but you know, I never heard it before I dug it out a week ago. So,
I love
but
that
it's
you
a great
found this
song.
a week ago and that song was probably recorded in the '60s.
Oh, for sure, for sure. It's probably 66, I think. But that's Pat Lewis, and after reading the book, I was like, really excited to find a Pat Lewis, and I did see her. So the British came over here uh, a couple times for something called Detroit a Go Go. And they would, this guy, Phil Dick, who's still around in England, and he would bring over all these people from different Northern Soul clubs. They would come over and they wanted to see Motown stars and they wanted to dance all night in Detroit. And so they would do this Detroit a Go Go. And I happened to
Ah,
be lucky to go to the last one in 2022,
wow.
and Pat Lewis was there, Kim Weston was there, the Coasters, not all of them, but
Sure.
one of my favorite artists, Carolyn Crawford, who's in Detroit still. JJ Barnes, I saw him before he passed away. Yeah, I mean, it was fantastic. It was really cool to kind of see that and, see how that was my first experience in 22 with a big British crowd.
Oh,
And
that's
see how much they love. So when I went to the UK, I played with my friends at this little club called Woody's, and in the day, and then at night I'd go over to Winter Gardens and dance with like thousands and thousands of people who were just so excited for to have you know the commemoration of the 50th anniversary, which was huge. It's British culture.
oh,
It's not even just subculture anymore. And I actually made it onto the BBC morning show.
wow, look at you.
'Cause I'm kind of crazy. I'm really obsessed. And I heard that the BBC was calling for people to come out in the morning before the whole weekender started. And I thought, oh, I'll go watch. And next thing I know, they're hearing an American accent and people like pulled me over. And I did know some people who were there that I had met online during live streams. Lee Courtney Rollins and Debbie Massey, who all went to Wigan. But it was very funny. But the commenter, asked me a question. And then the next day, or that later in the afternoon, people who would watch the BBC show recognized me on the street
Oh
in
my
Blackpool.
gosh. Very cool. Well, hopefully they'll do the same thing with this video. I hope.
I hope you
Um,
go viral. Yeah.
Me too. Me too. And you know what? You were talking about Detroit, and I love Detroit. I think Detroit is such an underrated city, and to see it coming back to the masses, like on TV, where people are talking about it in positive light, it's great because there's so much musical history
Yeah.
in Detroit. There is no Chicago without Detroit, and vice versa. You know what I mean? Like they're
Yeah.
almost sister cities, and
Right.
it's nice to see the soul come back to Detroit
Yeah.
in a more mainstream way, where it's not just pockets where they were hidden. There's because all those musicians that played on Motown records were all from Detroit for the most part, especially the early
Right.
Motown
Well, we
records.
shared a lot. VJ Records, which was at 1449 South Michigan, and then that building became the Brunswick later on. But that was like one of the early R&B soul record labels in Chicago in the 50s and 60s. And Vivian Carter, and her husband James Bracken, I think they both, it was like a early one of the biggest independent labels, that you know inspired, I want to say, inspired Barry Gordy.
You
It
know what?
was.
Imitation is the highest form of flattery, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like Chicago has done a lot for the world, and we don't get enough credit for it. And certainly Detroit is another one of those cities that doesn't get a
Yeah.
lot of credit. Magically, everything happens in New York or Los Angeles, so uh, I'm with you there. And I wanted to just wrap up by again asking you, what's the website people can learn more about
Yeah.
what you guys do and all that
Perfect.
good stuff?
Sorry, I kind of dragged on.
Oh, you're
So
fine.
we are, you can go on our Instagram or Facebook page. It's Heart of
Mhm.
Chicago Soul Club. We're four women who get out there and nurture a community on the dance floor. Times are, hard for people, so we want to make that space on the dance floor, something enjoyable, something to take your mind off of things. And dance is very beneficial for a lot of reasons. Mental
Absolutely.
health, it helps us not, isolate. It's socially
Social. It's
engaging.
what our parents
Yeah,
did and our grandparents did, and they did it for reasons, and they did it in darker times, one would argue, than now, especially our grandparents who,
right.
World War II was a thing, Vietnam was a thing,
Yeah.
the Korean War was a thing that was scary in the Cold War, and they dance, 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 right?
Yeah. And so we're women. I think what we bring different to
But men are welcome to these things, right?
men are
Women,
very welcome. Oh my
okay,
gosh. We
good.
want it, men in the UK dance more than the women. So we want to see all kinds of people out on the dance floor. This is we don't discriminate against age, gender,
All
race,
are welcome.
anything. We are inclusive. We have a very wide variety, and what people say is we are inclusive. And that's what they're kind of you know in love with too. But as women, I think we kind of curate it in more of like a nurturing way, and we want people to have fun, and we want to have fun at the party as well. So you'll
I,
always see, if you look at our Instagram, you'll see us on the dance floor, and you'll see us dancing on the stage.
I
Um,
I can't wait to come out to my first event with you ladies, and I'll be sure to let you know. But I look forward to it very much, just to enjoy that social interaction, hearing the music, and watching you and hearing you spin. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, and let's also not forget there's Ricky Friedman. So she used to be Rockin' Ricky. She's now Ricky Free, and we all have our own perspective. I'm very heavy on the Northern Soul. Kat likes to do a little Latin Soul. Rita we do have, she's a psychedelic DJ, but she brings this very danceable psychedelic that is a nice palate cleanser when you want something a little edgier. So
Mhm.
she'll do a little garage and psychedelic, which is very danceable. But the one thing I ask of everybody is that they bring an up tempo, upbeat record. And we do have guests coming in. I play in a big Northern Soul Weekender in Lancaster called Keystone Northern Soul Weekender, and there's like some of the best DJs in this country that come to that. And Philly is another city that had a lot of
Right. A lot of
really
soul in Philly.
great,
Yeah. I mean, Hall and
Mirwood.
Oates were the
Yeah.
Philadelphia sound, right? The soul.
Right, exactly. So there are the Philly Soul Club guys that pretty much put that on, along with a guy from England, from Skegness, which I went to the Skegness Weekender, and he comes in, and it's a great weekender. But I met the Nor'easter Soul Club. There's soul clubs all over this country, so wherever you go in the city, look up a Northern Soul Club. But Nor'easter's in Albany, New York. And then there's so I've got two DJs, one coming in from Nor'easter in April to play with us. And then we have David Swade, who's a big DJ, who's going to come play at Color Club with us June 7th. So we've got
Lots to
two
look forward
varieties
to.
of things. So we've got that really fun, sweaty hideout gig coming April 5th. And the big Northern Soul Feel up ballroom at Color Club June 7th.
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much for taking time to chat with me. I do appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.